Hello everyone. We'll begin in about 5 minutes. We are just letting people in to the webinar. And once we have most of them in, then we're going to start. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first session of WRI India's webinar series, Power at Peak. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, a few housekeeping announcements. This webinar will run for 1.5 hours and it is being recorded. The recording will be made available on WRI India's YouTube channel. We request all speakers and participants to remain on mute when not speaking. We will have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. Please use the Q&A chat box to submit your questions during the session. For any feedback or follow-up queries, please write to us at indiaenergy@wri.org. Welcome once again to the first session of Power at Peak. Today's webinar sets the foundation for the entire series by focusing on where electricity demand is coming from and why is it accelerating now. A quick review of today's agenda. We will begin with introductory remarks on Energy Transition Preparedness Initiative, also known as ETPI, and the Power at Peak webinar series, followed by a context-setting presentation based on the ETPI case study. We will then move into a panel discussion with sector experts before concluding with an interactive Q&A session with participants. To begin the session, I would now like to invite Sumedha Malviya, Program Head, Building Decarbonization and Sustainable Cooling, WRI India, for introductory remarks on the ETPI and on the webinar series. Sumedha, over to you.
Thanks, Ahona. And I welcome everyone to this webinar, which is the first in our 3-part webinar series, Power at Peak. We will also be doing 2 other webinars later this month and in early June. The webinar series is aimed at taking forward some of the research and findings from our case study, DISCOM initiatives to promote energy efficient appliances and equipment, which can be downloaded from the ETPI website. The link to download will be shared by my colleagues in the chat. Next slide. A bit of a background on the Energy Transition Preparedness Initiative, which is a multi-sectoral, multi-state endeavor to understand state-level plans, actions, and governance processes towards an energy transition. ETPI is a collaborative effort by the Prayas Energy Group, Sustainable Futures Collaborative, and WRI India. It uses an indicator-based assessment framework and in-depth case studies to explain state-level transition trends and practices. The research covers 3 energy-intensive sectors: electricity, buildings, and transport, and 10 Indian states. You can see the list of states that we have covered in the study. The first set of analyses using publicly available data has been completed for the fiscal years 2020 and 2021 and the FY 2023-24. And these study reports are also available on the ETPI website. The indicator framework also has cross-cutting indicators that track and analyze state-level planning by looking at frontline capacity, institutional coordination, and the approach to a just transition. Next slide, please. Within the indicator framework, the study on state-level efforts on demand-side management and the promotion of energy-efficient appliances has been done under both the electricity and the building sector indicators listed here. Under indicator E5 on demand-side management, we have looked at these five attributes covering the regulatory framework, targets and plans on DSM, availability of financial resources for meeting DSM targets, and efforts by DISCOMs and SDAs to inform the design of DSM programs. Similarly, on the building side, we have done additional analyses on the programmatic aspects of DSM, specifically studying the efforts undertaken by DISCOMs to promote energy efficient appliances and equipment. Next slide, please. Which brings us to this case study, where we have summarized all the initiatives to promote energy efficient appliances undertaken by DISCOMs in the last 10 years. Though we had cast a wide net looking at all Indian states, we find that DISCOMs in Andhra Pradesh, Delhi, Haryana, Karnataka, Kerala, and Odisha have implemented such programs. And coming to the overview of this research and our motivations, we were motivated to do this research due to gaps in literature. So while DISCOMs have been reporting DSM initiatives to state regulators, the lack of any consolidated impact analysis has created a knowledge gap about the effectiveness of these programs and their role in India's clean energy transition. In terms of the methodology for this study, we have reviewed a decade of literature, public DISCOM and regulatory records, and conducted expert interviews to assess the development and the implementation of energy efficient appliances programs or EAPs. The study examined the types, the design, the impacts, and the implementation experiences of DISCOM-led EAPs. To go further into the findings from our research, I now invite my colleague, Chandana Sashidharan, Program Research Fellow with the Energy team at WRI India. Over to you, Chandana.
Thank you, Sumita. I hope I'm audible. Rumpa, can we go to the next slide, please? I think there cannot be a better time than right now to talk about the importance of demand-side measures in India. We all know that on April 25th, 2026, India is going through an extremely hot year right now. There are also added pressures, especially on cooking because of the geopolitics. So on April 25th, we did hit the highest peak demand of 256 gigawatt. What you see on the slide to the India map is on that particular day, we went a little bit down deeper to examine which all states had hit peak demand at that day. Where was individual states' demand standing? As you can see from the graph, most of the states in southern, western, and eastern India had hit near close to their highest peak demand. Some of the states actually hit their highest demand on that day, but other states were already having high demand, and some states were already on the highest demand from March itself. That's what is happening. And what we also see is like towards the rest of the India, towards the north and northwest also, the demand was quite high. It hadn't hit the highest demand phase yet, but they were still close to 80% or 70% of their demand they had. Only a few states in northeast as well as Uttarakhand were the only states which had on that day electricity demand less than 70%. This brings us the perfect opportunity to present findings from our research. We know that energy demand is increasing in India at a time while we are transitioning to cleaner power generation. And if we trace back the history of demand side management in India, the ideas and principles surrounding demand side management originated at a time when there was a gap between the supply and demand. Whereas right now our scenario has changed drastically, and we are entering into a age where we have systems powered by high concentration of variable renewable energy. So we focused on this research to address the knowledge gap that existed on demand side management programs, particularly to bring about how they would help in addressing the issues of energy transition. Rumpa, can we move ahead to the next slide? So, as everybody knows, one of the major types of energy efficient programs implemented in India are the lighting programs. And the most successful one among them is obviously the Ujala program. But we did dig a little bit deeper to test all of the lighting programs that are happened, starting with the early pilots that happened in Bangalore and Nashik, and even the first national campaign of Budget LAM Yojana, the BRI program, which evolved under the Clean Development Mechanism. At this time, the technology was CFL LAM. From 2014 onwards, we gradually see the shift towards LED lights, and there again was a pilot which led to the origin of our most successful program, our Ujala program from 2015. But we also see other models that have evolved within the lighting programs. From 2016 onwards, a few of the Delhi Discom had tried programs in partnership with manufacturers. And also another example for a different sort of a partnership is Kerala doing its filament free campaign, which was a Discom and a state designated agency partnership. Rumpa, let's go to the next slide. On the types of EAP, to continue, the next major set of energy efficient appliance programs has been on the cooling appliances, and one on the fans become very common because it was integrated as part of the Ujala scheme. But it is interesting to note that the first pilots happened in Maharashtra. At the time, it helped spur the market for energy efficient appliances. There was a national scheme that was launched for fans under Ujala. But there are also other type of programs that happen with manufacturer partnership, and Odisha Discoms are perhaps trying to do another larger scale fan deployment program at this point, which has a huge target of 20 lakhs fans. Rumpa, over to the next slide, please. Yeah, so if we when we talk about fans and lights, these were very common energy efficient programs, whereas AC programs were limited to a few discoms. So mostly the Maharashtra and the Delhi discoms. So Maharashtra had early pilots on efficient appliances at a time, I believe, when there were no efficient appliances in the market. So this definitely helped us for the market. And Delhi discoms have picked up on that, and they have run year-round campaigns for energy efficient ACs. Recently, a pilot was also announced by Andhra Pradesh, but it is interesting to note that there was never a national level campaign for air conditioners, and this becomes an interesting question because ACs is probably one of the major contributors to ongoing peak demand increase. We also see attempts by Haryana and Odisha, who had proposed air conditioning programs. As part of our research, we had also studied that in detail, even though these programs eventually did not get implemented. Rumpa, go to the next slide, please. I will quickly take you to the elements of the program design. So when we talk about this, we need to think about two things. One is on the modes of implementation. The next major component is on the financial viability of the, how do you improve the financial viability of energy efficient appliances. In terms of modes of implementation, the most popular mode definitely is partnership with ESL or other public sector entities. Like we have seen partnership with SECI, for example. And then Kerala and Andhra Pradesh come out of as cases where discoms have actually partnered with state designated agencies. But other than that, there are also direct to consumer models wherein discoms have taken lead to help consumers adopt appliances. In this, we see two different cases. One is where the manufacturers were selected through competitive bidding, similar to what could be evolved under the ESL model. But there are also other models where discoms are collaborating with manufacturer who might offer exclusive rebates to consumers through when they purchase through their channel. And the four major element which has impacted or which has brought down the cost for energy efficient appliances through this demand side programs. First portion is obviously rebates and subsidies. One is a regulator approved subsidy that is there, but in the case of states like Odisha, The state government has also offered subsidy. Demand aggregation and bulk procurement has been a key element which brought down the cost in this case. As I explained earlier, there are also examples where manufacturers have offered discounts for energy efficient products when purchased through the discount channel. And another forgotten application which was tested out really well is the on-bill financing mechanism. This happened at a time particularly when the cost of lights were very higher. So how through electricity bills could the cost be recovered later on from the consumers was the thought process with respect to on-bill financing. Next slide, please, Rumpa. Quickly to also walk you through the third major aspect from our study, which is on, we try to capture what were the implementation experiences and what insight do we derive from these programs. What we see is that the relationship and the role of DISCOM and ESL actually has evolved through the ages. When these programs initiated, DISCOM was the partner who connected an implementing agency like ESL with the consumers, and DISCOMs are the primary contact. So, and later on, we see this relationship evolving a lot through the ages. With different benefit sharing models, like DISCOMs taking themselves in leadership. So we definitely see that happening as the system, as the years are passing and different programs are being tested out. What we also see is mostly these programs have kept much in pace with energy efficiency norms. As I explained, when the first AC programs were starting, there were not many 5-star appliances in the market. And then on, we also see that sometimes energy efficiency norms change while the programs are in place. We also see instances of where Delhi regulator has approved new models and discontinued old inefficient models while the programs were running on. However, we also need to notice that lights, while they were a plug-and-play solutions, fans definitely were not. So there were many challenges with programs for energy efficient fans, including consumer reluctance to part with their old fans and challenges in getting the fans installed and other areas while these programs were being run. It is also important to recognize that from a behavioral perspective, timing of the program launch has a significant impact on the success of the program. So for programs targeting cooling appliances, the right time of launch is very important for the program. But at the same time, a small DSM cells with minimal staff might find it challenging to cater to all of the demand that is arising from all of the consumers during a particular period of time as well. What we also observe is that there is a distinct regulatory preference, especially when it comes to air conditioners, on replacement rather than new appliances. And the rationale for this is that an inefficient appliances continuing to be in the system will cause a larger damage than a new appliance in the system. One final observation I wanted to make is that there are a few examples, including what has happened in Nashik and Delhi with respect to where women have been part of the community engagement initiatives. And I hope we have panelists joining us today who can talk to you more about these aspects as well. Rumpa, over to the next slide. This is my last slide. This is where I stop and provide the way forward for the panel discussion. So in terms of the highlights and the way forward recommendations we had, we thought of 5 major things. One is on how, with respect to the consumers, how to engage with consumers more, as well as the behavioral change strategies for the consumers. That is the emphasis of today's discussion. We want to, none of these programs are going to be successful without specific targeted campaigns wherein consumers feel like a part of a program. There is a definite approach to engage with consumers. And also there are measures which can nudge consumers to the right path. And then on, there are the 2 other major elements come in wherein there is an importance to recognize not just energy, but also the capacity savings that an energy efficient appliance program can provide definitely with respect to capacity savings, which links to the peak demand reduction, associated reduction in avoid capacity of generation, distribution, transmission, augmentation, and all of that. That becomes very critical. This also gets interlinked with the ongoing development of the resource adequacy plan, as well as the new regulations that we see coming out in the demand space, which actually talk about demand flexibility coming out in Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Karnataka. Even we should call out to Assam for their demand response regulations. That is something that we plan to do for webinar 2. And on towards the webinar 3, the areas of attention that we'll bring about is on the monitoring and verification process for that. Right now, what we see is a deemed savings approach, and how do you go beyond that is something that deserves a lot of attention. And the fourth element is about bringing in circularity considerations for this. Like, is replacement your only path ahead? Do we want to look at alternatives like reuse and refurbishment for appliances? Because resource efficiency is also an important parameter when we discuss that. So that's the thought process I want to leave you with. And as I explained today, we will focus more on the consumer related aspects. And from here, I'm going to pass on to Ahona to lead us to the panel discussion.
Thank you, Chandana, for those valuable insights and for laying out the emerging trends shaping electricity demand in India. We will now move into the panel discussion segment of today's webinar. This discussion will explore the implications of rising residential demand, summer peak load growth, consumer behavior, demand side interventions, and the role of energy efficient appliances in supporting grid reliability and reducing system stress. We are delighted to be joined by an esteemed panel of experts today. Mr. Ajit Pandit, co-founder and director, Idam Infrastructure Advisory Private Limited; Mr. Kishore Kumar, senior manager, CLASP; K. Vishnu Mohan Rao, program lead, Electricity Governance, Citizen Consumer and Civic Action Group; Shweta Kulkarni, fellow, Prayas Energy Group; and Syed Hassan Imam, head of Group Customer Experience Management, Tata Power Delhi Distribution Limited. The discussion will be moderated by Mr. Bhaskar Natarajan, senior fellow, WRI India. Thank you all for joining us today. Over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us here today. I hope I'm audible, and I can post the question. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, great, wonderful. As was mentioned just now, we have a set of people who have contributed immensely to energy efficiency, appliances, and demand side management in the country. The organizations that are here with us today are very well known. And I'm going to perhaps, based on the presentation that was made, put out a few questions. The first round of questions will be to seek the experiences of these organizations on energy efficiency and appliances in the country today in view of the presentation that was made. And then I would do the second round of follow-up questions based on follow-ups that will come up after the first round of questions and answers. I'm going to start with Kishore from CLASP. CLASP is a well-known organization that has contributed to standards and labeling programs in the country. Kishore, we understand that recently there has been a report that has been released and launched for residential and commercial energy demand in the country by CLASP and BE jointly. Would you like to tell us something about it? This is, I understand, literally hot off the press.
Thank you, Bhaskar sir. Can you hear me well? And also,
Yes,
there's a background
we can
announcement.
hear
Is
you.
it fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So, first of all, thank you to WRI team and to you to give us this opportunity. So, maybe just I would like to first talk quickly about the class work that we be doing on the cooling appliances on this, and also the recent work on the surveys that we did across the nation, around 4,000 samples. So before that, I would say on the cooling, CLASP has focused on the appliances efficiency since the launch of the standard labeling program, and we've been focused on working air conditioner, fans, and other appliances. Uh, if you talk about the efficiency improvement for the air conditioners, so far it has been improved in almost 50% since inception to till date in the 1 star. And if you talk about the 5 star, it is almost 80%. And we are talking about the efficiency comparing globally. These efficiencies are now globally parred with other countries from 2028 onwards. This is called global best efficiency for air conditioners. Similarly, for the ceiling fans also, they are like one of the global best efficiencies. That's about the background context on the appliances that we've been focused on. And coming about the recent study that we did with Bureau of Energy Efficiency for the last 1 year. We did a national level survey of 4,000 samples in 53 cities in 20 states. And we've tried to understand the ownership of the appliances and also the share of rural and urban ownership. And one of the interesting findings on the air conditioners is that the AC penetration has been increased to 13%. Earlier it was like in the sector it used to call like 7 to 8%. And if you talk about the fans, it's almost like close to 100%. And if you see the one of the key recommendations coming out from all the studies is that uh, I think consumers, end of the day, need to understand the affordability is like the major focus which they always want to have. And also the kind of financial incentive is also required for them to buy higher efficiency appliances. And at the same time, there is a need to have a demand flexibility and integration with the labeling program or the national policies. And further, what we also realized is that there should be a efficiency improvement regularly happening at different levels. Even at the policy side, and also, consumers. Right now, if you see, they only purchase 3 star. That's a majority of the market. But if you see, the 5 star share is only 25%. So I think the consumers also need to buy the efficient appliances if they have a purchasing power, so that there is a policy push and also the market transformation from coming from the market side as well. So yeah, I'm going to pause here. Let me know if you want me to add anything further. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot for that, Kishore. I'm not sure whether I came across any report launch for this survey. Did I miss it, or was this report launched recently, or is it likely to be launched?
It launched just a week ago with
Oh,
Bureau of
okay.
Energy Efficiency. Yes, it is out there. Yeah.
Okay, I probably missed that. I will download the report, and I'm sure all of us will be happy to go through it. This is perhaps the first time the Bureau has undertaken such a large scale survey of appliances, and I'm sure the findings would definitely and would lead to guidance on future policy actions. Thank you, Kishore, for that. May I now move to Ajit from IDEM? Your firm, Ajit, has had a long history working on DSM with the DISCOMs and on demand side management programs. Could you tell us over the 12 years, how have the state DISCOMs, I'm not referring to the presentation, the private DISCOMs have done some work. Which are work on demand side management?
Right.
Over to you, Ajit.
Yeah, thank you, Bhaskarji, for that question. And at the outset, let me thank WRI for this opportunity, as well as the timing is most appropriate. All of us are actually reeling under severe heat wave, and the demand is soaring sky high. So before I get into the specifically about the private sector DISCOMs initiatives, let me just take a quick overview about how the DSM framework has evolved. We have been associated with this issue for the last more than 1.5 decades or so, and we had come a long way as a country on the looking at the demand side management. And broadly, one could divide this into four phases, if I may call it. Prior to 2010, even the load shedding protocols or agricultural load management were construed as a demand side management initiatives by the state discoms. So the first time that any serious attempt on the demand side management when looked at by a regulatory institution was Maharashtra way back in 2010, and followed by the model regulations that forum regulators, which again we supported for development of those model regulations. So that regulations actually play put out a very important aspects about how the DSM needs to be seen by the distribution companies. What is the target setting? What is the potential assessment? What is the role of the distribution companies and other stakeholders? Creation of the DSM cell within the institution, development of the programs, DSM programs, specific programs, having a cost recovery mechanism in place, cost benefit analysis framework, all those things. And as typically one would have it, the many state regulatory commissions also came out with those on regulations, little bit customization based on the model regulations. But the implementation was far less of those regulations. And there are several issues about in terms of the stakeholder or utility level capacity building initiatives, the measurement protocols, the lack of understanding on all those things. But even in then those cases, under those frameworks, particularly in Maharashtra, Tata Power and as well as that time Reliance and then Adani had come out with certain DSM programs, particularly targeted towards the CNI consumers, the commercial and industrial category consumers, and they had a fairly good amount of response, about 15 to 20 megawatt of DSM initiatives for certain period they were able to harness. But the utility always have a concern about when they are running about a DSM program, particularly whether it is the cost of the sales and at the cost of the revenue loss to the utility or so, and if the cost was now not fully covered up. So then the utility did not have enough motivation or incentive to look at them seriously. But clearly, even those experimental initiatives had a fairly good results for the utilities as well as consumers to look at it. One important thing that actually came about was the consumer awareness about these programs is extremely important for proliferation of large scale programs, as also the utility handholding to the consumers, and then the regulatory continuous support is something that was required. And this is something that was further pushed in 2014 to 20 or 15 to 20 regime, wherein the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and ESL came out with the very strong push by actually creating kind of a program, a national level program to support the distribution companies to create DSM sales within the organization, undertaking a load surveys across many states, and that is where the consumer contribution and possible potential assessment, and that paved the way for actually development of national program like Ujala that we saw it, and then the huge success of Ujala. Almost 60 plus discoms did participate in, were supported through Bureau and Energy ESL through various programs. But again the challenge is okay. It's largely treated as essentially as a compliance check prior to 2020 by the regulatory commission as a checkbox for whatever DSM regulation followed or not, and not necessarily integrated as a DSM as a resource in their overall resource planning for the utilities. And that has actually is changing. That's changing very fast, and then the important reason for that is actually the kind of high scale of renewable energy into the grid. So the focus from the peak demand management and just shortfall energy management is completely now shifted towards looking at the demand flexibility, and to that extent, these DSM programs would be helping. And many state commissions have started looking at it seriously. Maharashtra, Karnataka, Assam has come out with the demand flexibility obligation regulation, setting the targets from 1.5% going up to 3.5%. But what is required now going forward is actually more concentrated effort to try and understand, to move from merely the reducing the DSM initiative is not just for reducing or managing the peak demand. It has to be actually for managing this renewable integration into the grid, avoid this RE curtailment. You are hitting the 256 gigawatt of a peak at the system level. At the same time, there is a 10 gigawatt plus daily curtailment that is happening out here. So we need to really look at the overall demand shape more carefully and devise programs that will actually address these issues. Maybe I'll take a break here and before coming up to a couple of other aspects. Back to you, Bhaskar.
Thank you, Ajit, thanks, Ajit, for those points. And you brought the real issue of RE integration and demand flexibility into the picture. As you said, some states have already kind of gotten some of these regulations out. And the real challenge is to see how these will be implemented. Thanks for that. I'll come back to you. Now let me move on to Shweta from Prayas Energy Group. Prayas has done a whole lot of work on studying demand analysis and in terms of modeling demands under their own peer framework. So looking at initiatives that monitor residential energy consumption. Could you tell us what do you see in the future in terms of rising cooling demand and the recent switch to electric cooking, which has arisen out of geopolitical considerations? Do share your thoughts on this. Over to you, Sweta.
Yeah. Thanks, Bhaskar. And also thanks to WRI for inviting us to the webinar. Like Ajit said, yes, it's a very timely topic that we're all discussing on this panel today. So I'll quickly dive into three aspects, Bhaskar, that you highlighted. So one is typically from the monitoring exercises that we've been conducting, this was well before COVID, was when the demand for residential energy use, we were trying to really understand how appliances are consuming this electricity and which appliances are really contributing to how much of this electricity. But interestingly, over the last 5 years, so to say, post-COVID, I think we have all been experiencing a very dramatic shift in the kind of appliances that households are having today. And I think the study that class brought out very recently also throws some light on this shift or transition to the different kind of appliances that households have been using. So there, I think there are 2-3 sort of insights that I would like to share from some of our ongoing studies, as well as the modeling effort on peer and Rumi that we've been doing, is that space cooling alone is projected to account for almost 60% of the total residential electricity demand into 2040. Today, the estimates stand at around 30%. So that there's going to be this steep increase, most of which is coming from space cooling. And I think where Sumedha also started off the discussion was that space cooling is not a energy requirement for space cooling is not just a contribution of the kind of appliances that are being used, but it's also a multi-pronged sort of an impact, which is because of the kind of buildings that are being built, the efficiency of the appliances, and also the penetration and usage of the same. So I'll just, why I wanted to bring this up was that the study that we had done pre-COVID showed that households did use air conditioners, but the usage hours were limited. But even if you see in the new study that class has published, also in the kind of projections that we're seeing through peer modeling, is that the usage hours are also going to go up for space cooling appliances, which is a big concern. And essentially more so because again, where we started off talking about peak, today the cooling demand share in the peak in the country maybe, I would say, about 25 to 30%, but it is significantly different across states. And urbanization, economy, geographies are playing significant roles. One particular state where we've been seeing or observing these changes, especially because of space cooling, is Kerala. So if you look at the load curve or the load shape of Kerala, last 5 years, they've been experiencing 2 peaks in the evening. And managing two peaks for the DISCOM is becoming a very, very difficult phase, especially in states where peak demands are being managed using particular generation sources. Changes in weather patterns, changes in monsoons impacts them significantly. So I think understanding appliance usage is very critical because it has multiple ramifications, which blows up on until the level of how power purchase planning as well as procurement is done at the utility level.
Yeah, thanks for that input, Shweta. We'll come back to you shortly. Now, let me move on to Vishnu from Citizen, Consumer and Action Group. Citizen Action and Consumer Group has had a long experience in engaging with customers in the electricity sector. Looking at promotion of energy efficient appliances and to encourage consumers to adopt energy efficient appliances. What have been some of the lessons that have come out from this? What has been the response to some of these promotional programs? Over to you, Vishnu.
Hi. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhaskar. I'll speak from a consumer perspective. In fact, in Tamil Nadu, these regulations are in place from 2013, but nothing much has happened. The DISCOM is more keen on working on promoting awareness rather than engaging themselves with actual DSM programs. They did that maybe 8 to 10 years ago, and along with EESL, but those programs did not actually work out the way it needed. I think here I should be upfront because the DISCOM was quite worried about their loss of revenue due to energy efficient appliances. There's not been a decoupling effort in that sense. So the DISCOM was also given provision by the Tamil Nadu Electricity Regulatory Commission to come up with DSM measures as part of the tariff orders, but they did not, do anything about it, and this was disallowed in the next phase of tariff orders. That's the thing. In terms of CAG's work and our experience in the sector, I think it's very simple. I think all consumers recognize BE star labels, energy efficient appliances, and I don't think that's the issue. I think the question is why is it not getting translated into a purchase? Of course, there are two things there, which is cost decision and also the invisibility of the payback. What is it that they can payback period, or in terms of do we have to peg it around the tariff which keeps going increasing, or is it around their usability, in-house usability of the appliance over a period of time? Those are two things that in my mind immediately occurs. And the fact that we are talking about the cities per se, but I think in the rural areas and others, there's a problem of you buy something and the after sales of certain newer technologies or energy efficient appliances are kind of weak, and it becomes a kind of an issue and a non-starter. They rather have something that is that they can service very easily. That's something that they have. In terms of there's a loss aversion. That is like why do I have to go in for something that is already working well? It's like a fridge works for like 10-15 years. Why do I have to change that fridge for an energy efficient one which is costlier? And how does that help me? And here I should also add that the point that the present government has kind of given 200 units free, and that also weighs into the consumers. Somebody raised their hands. So yeah, and that kind of weighs into their decision making. And I'm not sure about the DISCOM schemes because in Tamil Nadu it is not there. I don't know how what is the red tape behind these schemes, for example, and what kind of barriers are faced during each intervention. That is something that I hope to learn from this thing. And I think that's the question that I could answer this as I go in the second bit. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, sorry. Thanks for that input, Vishnu. I don't see Syed Hassan on the list. Has he joined from Tata Power?
Syed is running late, Bhaskar.
Okay, all right. Then I think I will go to Kishore again. And perhaps, Kishore, you could tell us a little more about how the relevance for energy efficient appliances, particularly cooling, is becoming even more relevant right now. I know that cooling has been an important part of India's thermal landscape, and therefore cooling is something that we can't do without. But the importance of it getting more and more relevant today and in the coming few years. Could you address that? What are CLASP's initiatives and thoughts on this?
Sure, sure, sir. Thanks for that great question. It's very, on spot, I should say. So, first of all, the relevance why, energy efficiency for cooling appliances at this moment, because of our extreme heat waves and the temperatures in India, the sales of an air conditioners is getting increased. Just to give an example, like what is that volume about? If you talk in 2017-18, the air conditioner sales were like, I think, less than 6-7 million. But if you see the last year, the overall sales accounted with Bureau of Energy Efficiency close to 17 million. So that's a kind of a volume that's keep on increasing. The AC penetration is also getting increased with the surveys that we did, we learned it. So because the consumers needed comfort cooling during these extreme summers and the heat waves, they're relying more on the air conditioners and also for the ceiling fans. And if they are inefficient, and you know how it's going to affect the whole ecosystem, and even in the grid, the peak demand, it's contributed to keep peak demand also. So there has to be energy efficient and super efficient as possible. Uh, and further, apart from all of this, if you see, as like Shweta mentioned, cooling, contributes to measure of our India's electricity consumption. And if you want to meet our climate goals, I think focusing on the energy efficiency of cooling appliances is one of the low-hanging fruit, I should say, with a higher efficiency norms and the kind of a demand flexibility initiatives would able to accelerate those meeting the climate goals. And further, I would like to also say that if you see, the consumers actually need to be more and more aware about the life cycle cost of an appliances, because especially in air conditioner, uh, the upfront cost, the initial capex cost, you say, is like 30%, goes 30-35%. But if you see, the running cost is like almost 60%, even more. So the operational cost is actually high, and the consumer need to be aware more on that aspect. And at class, we are trying to do more policy upgradation, not only for just like air conditioners and ceiling fans, even for other cooling appliances like chillers, trying to bring VRF under the program, variable refrigerant flow under the labeling program, and also trying to support Government of India to make more cooling appliances mandatory, like table fan, pedestal fan, evaporator coolers, which are also part of comfort cooling, I should say. And further, we are also trying to see how the subnationals are actually working in terms of the market transformation initiatives. As a class, we have a MOU with 5 priority states like Maharashtra, and sorry, Kerala, Odisha, and Yeah, Odisha, yeah, I'm just missing other states. So Madhya Pradesh, where we are trying to see how we can help to develop the market transformation programs for air conditioners and also for fans. In Odisha, they already made a announcement to replace their buildings, especially the government buildings, with latest five-star rated AC and super efficient fans. So that's how one of the initiative we're trying to focus more on the subnational level, even national subnational level, to accelerate the overall efficiency goal and also try to support Government of India initiative, I should say. Yeah, I'm going to pause there. Thank you.
Thanks, Kishore. Now let me move back to Ajit. Uh, Ajit, we have not tried to use incentives very much in terms of shaping the load curves in India across the states. I'm not really talking of any particular sector. There are incentives given to industries for load shapes. But what do you think has been the experience in terms of giving incentives, either through the tariffs or any other incentive, to see that the load shapes can be pushed towards something that is available as far as the renewables and the other generation is concerned?
Absolutely. Bang on. I was about to
What
go
are
to
your
ask
thoughts
you.
on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah. Bhaskarji, I think the time of the day and the time of use is important, the regulatory or pricing intervention that regulators have effectively used it. But before I move into those specific examples, since that we are discussing just now about the air conditioning impact on the demand and the demand shape, just one, statistical inference. I was trying to look at the national level peak demand or the overall demand analysis from the month mid-March of this year till the end of April. At the midnight hours at 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, the demand moved from typically about 160 gigawatt in mid-March to 190 gigawatt towards end of March, and by 230 gigawatts, I'm sorry, the 230 gigawatt. So about 40 gigawatt of addition over from March to April this year at the middle of the night at 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock time zone. So clearly this could be a residential air conditioning load, although we need to do a little bit more deep dive analysis of this. So this is what is the contribution of the possibly air conditioning load that is basically reflected in the overall demand shape, that to the middle of the night that is coming up in the coming years. Now, the regulators have actually used this time of the day tariff, particularly for the industrial and commercial category consumers, very effectively. For example, Maharashtra had a night rebate kind of a arrangement for many years, and then industries typically started, using the power during the night hours. Now, in the current regime, the load shape has undergone a change. We have a significant, the solar generation and also the solar hours. So there are initiatives to support the shifting of the load to the solar hours. We have seen the solarization of agriculture feeders, an important mechanism to move this towards the solar hours. The incentives being given for this to facilitate this load shifting through feeder separation, and as well as other mechanism through PM Kusum and other initiatives. Effectively also giving a rebate during the solar hours. The most of the states have started giving that. In fact, the MOP rules had actually recommended that we need to have necessarily a time of the day tariff introduced for categories even about 10 kilowatts, so to speak. And with the introduction of smart metering framework at the residential as well as many other consumer categories, it's possible to actually now implement this time of the day even at the lower end of the LT consumer segment effectively. So this has been a good mixed bag of experiences, but trying to learn from this TOD tariff and now probably moving towards the dynamic pricing also, not just the static pricing, because the load shape is actually changing very fast. And in the future, demand shaping is going to be driven by the essentially the appliance driven regime. For example, we're talking about this air conditioner and other cooling appliances requirement, but also the cooking appliances that will come in, with particularly the gas becoming a more and more scarce commodity. And with so we have started suddenly looking at the electric cooking or electrification of the cooking in a big way. Electric vehicles is another load that is going to come up in a big way. The third kind of load, large scale on the service is a new age kind of a load, like data centers or a green hydrogen, green ammonia plants, the electrolyzers plants. All these are actually going to change your load shape. And what is required before even designing an incentive scheme or a framework is have a better understanding about the load shape and then the contributors to load shape. The last serious exercise supported by Bureau and the ESL that was taken up in 2016 to 18 period, comprehensive load survey. And I see a couple of comments also in the chat box that what is the current status of this and whether we have a very serious scientific analysis been undertaken or not. But I think the starting point is that we have to undertake a comprehensive load survey as well as contribution of various consumer categories, and within consumer categories also contribution of various appliances to for that particular consumer category. So deep understanding of this is a starting point in my view before even we can design a new incentive or a penalty or a rebate or any kind of a mechanism. Yeah, so that's something that is a important need right now at this point in time.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. I mean, after the ESL's large-scale load research that really happened across several states, I'm not sure many states have updated those information in the last 3 or 4 years. Any updates do you have on that? Or how do we try to make sure the states are able to at least do some further updating or carry out flash load research service?
Right, absolutely. I think so. There is one element. You're right. There has not been any serious attempts after that. In fact, the COVID period impact or assessment also has not been seriously undertaken, and to that extent, there is a one regulatory provision under the resource adequacy frameworks, which is coming up in many state commissions are already now notified because of higher penetration of variable renewable energy into the grid, and to look at all types of resources, both supply side, demand side, carefully. So while doing this resource adequacy assessment, the starting point is actually the demand assessment, and that is forcing the utilities to look at demand beyond just peak demand or a monthly or annual energy consumption, to look at more hourly and sub-hourly granularity, and do the forecast at that kind of a granularity. As a part of doing that exercise, there is a mandate under the one of the chapters of resource adequacy regulations, which is a demand forecast, which forces the utilities to look at and undertake load surveys and then undertake those exercises. But again, as we said, it's all nice things in the regulations, but the implementation on the ground is not as much as what one would want. In any case, regulations have just about 1.5 to 2 years ago formulated, and then the first cycle of that RA compliance monitoring is still not taken place, maybe barring one or two states. So there is a directional clarity in terms of regulations and then the mandates, but we need to be able to do that. We have to also provide the handholding support to the states, create those again DSM cells. Maybe some national level program is timely now at this stage probably, or like we have PM Surya Ghar and PM Kusum. I think we should have PM DSM program to be launched or supported again through Bureau or ESL or any other agencies to undertake. I totally agree with you, Bhaskar. We need to have this top priority.
Thanks. I do like your idea of PM DSM program. I don't know. It appears as if everything has to have PM on it. Otherwise, things don't move. On that, let me come back to Shweta. I know that Prayas was a part of the DSM study, and then Prayas has had a long history of providing very key, crucial inputs to various regulations. What do you see coming up in the next year or two to see that whatever Ajit mentioned and also the study mentioned in terms of DSMs not really getting done on the ground? How do you think all of us, civil society, needs to push forward to seek more accountability of the regulator.
Yes. Thanks, Bhaskar. I think there are 2, 3 aspects that I would like to highlight here as part of the question that you asked. One, adding on to what Ajit was just mentioning about the RA regulations, which are certainly mandating demand estimation to become more accurate and more granular in a sense. The demand flexibility and demand response regulations that have come up with states also have a mandatory requirement for the discoms to undertake thorough load research. Now, of course, it needs to be seen how rigorously these exercises will be undertaken by distribution companies and whether the reports or results of these load researches will also be publicly disclosed or put out in the public domain. However, since Maharashtra has been one of the first first regulatory commissions which has come up with the demand flexibility and demand resource regulations, the utilities within Maharashtra have been undertaking these exercises. Prayas being a part of the demand flexibility and demand resource consultative committee, which has been formed by the Maharashtra Electricity Regulatory Commission, we've had the opportunity to look at and scrutinize some of the results that have been published as part of these load researches. Now, here I think is the sort of a tricky space where the purpose with which utilities are undertaking the load research and probably consumer end or consumer participation are looked at in 2 different buckets. But unfortunately for demand side management or even demand response, that is not the case. Unless consumers are really taken into confidence, they have been explained the benefits of why demand resource or why demand side management, the participation of the consumers will continue to remain poor. I think one very, I would say, a livid example that I would like to share here is the smart metering program that is being rolled out in Maharashtra today. I, being a consumer of MSEDCL, we received a letter from MSEDCL stating that your meters are going to be replaced by smart meters. And what smart meters are going to allow us to do, that is MSEDCL to do, is apply TOD tariffs. The moment a consumer reads this without really understanding what the time of day tariff actually means, what it will imply for these consumers, the first quick reaction is to protest, right? And I think that is one major reason where, how distribution companies are also interacting with the consumers, whether they're taking them into account and trying to build that trust with them is where there are these gaps. In some of the cases where we have certainly seen a lot of success and growth, like the Ujala program, right? Where the consumer benefit was very clear and very evident. Consumers have shown significant support to such programs. So I think the challenge there is to really sort of break down all the complexities around the different demand side management, demand flexibility programs to the consumer level and be able to explain to them actually what kind of benefits will they be able to get. I think just a simple parallel that we can draw is what is happening with the standards and labeling of appliances. Is that yes, it took some time for consumers to start switching to the 5-star appliances, but now consumers are able to read the star labels that have been put up on the appliances, and they are able to make that choice. So I think it's that gap that needs to be filled in being able to confidently communicate to the consumer in terms of what is expected of their participation and the benefit that they will obtain.
Thanks. I think that was a perfectly good example of communication from the DISCOM to a customer. And I believe that the private discoms perhaps are doing a little better in this respect, because I've received several communications from BSES Rajdhani Delhi in terms of promotion of appliances and so on. And I have a lot to learn in terms of customer out.
Professor, can you switch off your video? Then maybe the audio will become clear. The bandwidth is a
As
little low.
partners and told, I think the issue is that the state discoms need to see customers as partners rather than to just tell them from top down saying, I'm going to do this. At this stage, let me bring in Vishnu again. In terms of consumer action group for trying to promote the discoms communication on efficiency and various things, how do you think this is happening in Tamil Nadu? And is there a likelihood that with cooling demand and everything increasing, that energy is likely to become unaffordable? Over to you, Vishnu.
Yeah, in Tamil Nadu per se, I could say with confidence that I think the behavior will remain the same because of the 200 units free now. But in terms of, there is, like I said before, there's an overall awareness on energy efficiency, as Sweta also has pointed out. For me, it is more a matter of, a consumer decision is a matter of trust also. So this is where CAG comes in, builds that information base and facilitates that demystification information to be passed on to consumers. This is where I see CAG's role. In terms of I don't. And another thing is, I think it's more. I'm more curious to know why isn't this is a market failure. What's the role of private sector in terms of handholding the discom in this effort is for something that I kind of and triangulating with the consumers demands and educating them is something that I had in mind when the webinar was announced. Yeah. So yeah, I don't have a clear-cut answer here. Thanks.
I think that's an excellent question you have posed, Vishnu, but perhaps I might ask Ajit and Shweta to put in their thoughts on this particular question of the participation of the private sector. Ajit?
So there are quite a few again, you have to customize for the India situation. When you start looking at from the other markets or other jurisdiction, how it has actually evolved, the demand response participation facilitated for the consumer participation through an aggregator model, essentially. So there has to be some kind of a business model to be created for systems to harness this demand response as a really a resource for a scale at a scale. Then there are a lot more other ecosystem actions that may be put in place. The initial maybe the incentives about through TOD, TOU, or maybe some funding support or a system benefit charge could mobilize this only to a limited extent, and amongst the consumers which are maybe consumers who care, as well as consumers who are probably more aware, or utility take some private sector utilities take some initiatives, and even then we have seen the response has not been as much as what one would have wanted it. But going forward, if you are really looking at the demand response as a scale, and I was looking at a couple of the Great Britain model or a California model, a kind of demand response that they are able to actually harness is upwards of a gigawatt scale, but it has been built consciously over a period of time, with right from developing the protocols and procedures for appliance level metering, that is asset level metering and monitoring part of it, the procedures for enabling these guys to participate into the market mechanisms, the protocols for ancillary and balancing market participation framework, and to be able to do that not just individual consumer level, a group of consumers aggregated through aggregator framework. So that is something that is required. I'm aware the forum of regulators as well as regulators in Indian context are looking at these aspects carefully and seriously. The moment we put forth some kind of a business model framework and structure to it, there would be a private participation will start flowing in. We have seen this happening at the supply level aggregation in the form of QCAs on the although it's not really evolved to an extent of taking a investment exposure, but still there has been a business model which was built when the QCS came along. Something similar could actually happen in the demand response and demand flexibility management once you start making those small pieces of regulatory interventions in place, and along with that the other ecosystem aspects in place. One of the other important aspects at the distribution company level, first to start actually seeing these resources is a creation of a DSO framework at the distribution company level, because all of them finally cannot be talking to or saying through a system operator at the SLDC level. We are really talking about the small level interventions to be able to harness this. So there are many steps to walk through, but I have no doubt that the private sector participation would start flowing in the moment there is a policy and regulatory direction given in the right direction.
Thanks, Ajit. Shweta?
Yeah. I think just adding on to what Ajit mentioned is any level of participation, whether it is at the consumer end or even at the private sector participation that we're expecting, will grow only when demand side management, demand flexibility is not positioned merely as some savings or some incentive, but it needs to have like a larger value proposition in their entire business for the private sector and also for the consumers to see themselves more as a part of the system rather than just being on the periphery and being sort of directed to take some actions. And for that, I think critical aspects are that there has to be a trust that needs to be built at the consumer end, where the technologies that are deployed for demand response and flexibility should have very good monitoring systems, and the data that is recorded or obtained as part of these efforts is made accessible to the consumers as well, so that they know what their participation has actually led to, what kind of benefits they are seeing, and also be able to do their own math and computations on how their participation is actually benefiting. And I think automation is another thing that we should all start thinking about, whether as manufacturers, whether as distribution companies, whether as private sector participants, or even consumers, and make best use of the technology that we have today in terms of automating appliances, automating processes in a way where we are able to more deterministically understand our demand. And I think two other critical things is when we talk about demand flexibility or demand side management, I think there is like a gamut of options, many of which have been run through pilots, but large scale project rollout or implementation has still not seen the light of the day. There, I feel for distribution companies or even private sector participants, it is critical that we can come up with more targeted programs, identify those group of consumers which can really participate in these programs and see the benefit as well as the incentive direction then in a way, or also any sort of financing mechanisms that are provided can be directed to the targeted groups. And the last and the most important thing, I think, is the design of the programs need to really be simple and understandable in a way where the distribution companies, private sector players, or even for the consumers, they have very clear understanding about the savings and also the kind of convenience that they can get through these programs.
Thanks. One final question to Kishore, and then I think I would like to move on to the question answers. I see several questions that have been posed. Kishore, class being a global organization, what are some of the global insights on nudging customers towards energy efficiency that we can learn from?
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that question. So we recently had a policy exchange discussions in the Beijing, and also, some of our international team being to India policy makers to, to have those best practices. So one of the top thing that came forward is that in this global trend, especially on the labeling part, the labels actually has to be make it very simple communications about the efficiencies, because if you see even in India also, like, there used to be a label which used to be a bit of a yellow color, and it's a bigger size, but they have realized that it's just too much of a technical information. It's a complicated for the Indian consumers to comprehend all of that, so they have customized it. They made it very simple. They focus basic information, very easy for the consumers to understand. So globally, that is also been a trend. And not only that, they're trying to promote more and more, super efficient appliances. Like, in Brazil, they have a endorsement label. Even in the US, there is a Energy Star label, which has an endorsement label which says which is efficient than the which are like efficient the market average, get that endorsement label. So those things is been seen globally, and also India is trying to explore that as well for the air conditioners. It's in a very initial stage at this moment for air conditioners. That's one thing. And second thing is that we have learned in the Brazil and the China, they give very large scale incentive programs to the consumers, especially on the labeling program, to promote the efficient appliances. And also in China, they try to provide a huge scale of incentives to the manufacturers as well for technology transformation, and also for complying for higher efficiency appliances. And further, there is a need, a focus also there from all the other governments on the consumer awareness, the behavioral change aspect, I should say. So that has also been one of the priorities they have. And further, if you see some of the countries, they wanted to be the world best efficiencies, which is like world best maps, which is minimum energy performance standards for certain technologies. Like if you see air conditioners, China has always been the front runner on the efficiency levels. India, are now par with that, but still they all they're going to come up in the next year onwards. They will want to even have a more aggressive efficiency norms, so that they can have that global dominancy of technologies and higher efficiency, air conditioners, I should say. And further, what we also learned is that, as we all know, the purchasing, it's not only done at the retailer stores, they're also been done on the, you know, online e-commerce platforms globally. So if you see in the EU, there is a very clear guidelines, even in China, the clear guidelines, like whenever a consumers try to purchase appliances in the e-commerce platform, this e-commerce platform ensures to have clearly deals about the efficiency and the cost saving of the super efficient appliances or even efficient appliances. So there is an online compliance mechanism there in the EU and also in China. So India is also have started doing it since beginning of this year. And further, just quickly talking about the DR, demand response, what we also learned is that uh, of course, the integration of the labels and the DR is crucial and essential. That's how the globally they're trying to see. But at the same time, what we learned is, I think China have been doing a lot on the air conditioner demand response program, and that's been the need of the hour there, because in terms of technology, they have far more advanced them, and they're trying to now focus more on the DR and also on the refrigerants part, and ensure that consumers can try to use more demand flexibility for the air conditioner so that the peak demand can be controlled and they have a better management of overall grid. So yeah, so this is all the trends that we have, and some of the Indian policymakers are also learning all of that. They already adopted and they're trying to focus more on the DR part and also on the endorsement labels as well for the air conditioners, I should say. Yeah, I'm going to pause here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the panelists for the very insightful contributions. I think it's been very, very useful information in terms of your experiences and sharing. I'm going to now pass on to Ahuna for managing the question answer session. We've had several questions I see in the chat box and in the QA session. Over to you, Ahuna.
Thank you so much to everyone for a very engaging and insightful discussion. We will now move to the Q&A session, and participants can actually continue submitting the questions to the Q&A chat box or even in the chat box. I am also going to request the panelists to kindly type out the type out the responses wherever relevant. And Rishabh Soni, Senior Program Associate, WRI India, will help coordinate and manage the incoming questions, and Sumita and Chandana will also support. So over to you, Rishabh, to take over the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Aman, and thanks to all the panel speakers for insightful comments on various aspects. We have around 8 minutes, so we'll take around 2 to 3 questions because we have tried to type out some answers in the chat as well. So first question is from Rahul Agnihotri. He's asking, any public utility has done a scientific load research study and captured the seasonal load profile that help accounting of actual demand contribution of specific equipment or appliances to the peak demand of a public utility. How can we capture these actual real-time contributions of air conditioner demand in residential segment, especially compared to peak demand of public utility? Open to any of the panel speaker if they want to answer this.
Hi, Rishabh. I can take this question.
Sure.
Yeah. So basically, as part of the demand flexibility, demand response regulations that have come up in Maharashtra, Tata Power Mumbai specifically has taken up very detailed load research. They do have developed seasonal load profiles for different category type of consumers. However, to the extent or the detail that the question asked by the participant in terms of really getting data for particular appliances is not being covered as part of the load research as yet. And incidentally, their load research is also public on their website.
Thank you, Shweta. So there was also one more very short related question. Can we give some good examples of demand flexibility and demand side management programs by public discoms?
So demand flexibility programs, I don't think there is any example as yet in the sense realm of desirability or on paper discussion which is there, but clearly one possible discussion is about the EV charging during the flexible hours, and they can also start contributing. In fact, there is a vehicle to grid framework also under discussion. So if they are actually able to, if they are able to have a framework in place, then that is something that could be looked at very seriously. The EV operations are very important resource. Similarly, the storage at the consumer and storage, its participation for a support to the grid on call upon. But all this would require actually the communication protocols, the metering mechanism, the settlement framework, as well as the pricing frameworks. All this needs to be put in place. These are all operational examples globally, which are very well available. But in Indian context, I think we are on the flexibility harnessing. Demand response, there are a couple of pilot projects. In fact, unfortunately, we didn't have a speaker on the panel from Tata Power Distribution Delhi. Both BRPL, BYPL had extensive experience of pilot projects on demand response, both manual as well as auto demand response in place. But flexibility side, there are hardly any examples in Indian context.
Sure, Ajit. Also, I think we will see those happening as we move forward. Also, one more question was one of the participant was uh, there are many frameworks being introduced and many regulations about demand side management and demand flexibility. But how can we actually look at what are the effective approaches for consumer enrollment in and sustained participation in this program? That was one question that was asked by one of the participants. One thing is mentioned at time of the tariff, then there are other things like social norms, adoption, what are the adoption barriers, how do we solve that? So any thoughts on this?
Maybe Shweta or maybe consumer point of view, Vishnu can try and address what are the expectations or ask for this.
Yeah, I was just contemplating, right? I mean, more so because, like Ajit was also mentioning earlier, large scale rollout. I mean, have not been really happening across several utilities, but I think especially with larger loads like EV charging, we will certainly see more consumers taking up the opportunity to participate in these programs. Simultaneously, within Mumbai, private discoms, of course, they have come up with some very interesting programs for industries, medium and small scale industries, for participation in behind the meter storage kind of programs, which will act as flexible resources. Of course, time will have to tell in terms of their continued participation through these programs. But at the design level and at the conceptual level, the programs are very interesting, and certainly there is benefit for the consumers as well as for the utility. So in such cases, I think where there is a win-win, there will certainly be some continued engagement that we can see, and also probably scale up of these programs once these engagements go up.
Thank you, Shweta. So I will try and close with one final question, and this has appeared twice, so I'm just taking it. It's a very short question on how time of the tariffs are structured. So these are mostly structured around solar generation hours, where people who work are not at home, and the actual beneficiaries are not residential consumers. So any comment on that?
So for residential consumers, TOD, it's not a rebate and penalty. It's only a rebate kind of thing during the daytime hours, which is there. It's only been introduced recently in a couple of states. But you want to be able to implement it, the residential consumer level metering arrangements need to be, and that is where the smart meter push is there. And as Shweta said, probably this benefit is not automatically communicated to the consumer. It is probably the utility is talking from what it would benefit utility and not necessarily from the consumer perspective. I think that needs to be brought out. And clearly, in terms of, maybe I don't have exact numbers, but I think from the news article that is quoted, I think Maharashtra informed that since the introduction of the TOD at the residential level, in fact, overall TOD new revised structure, almost close to 2,000 crores of overall benefit has been passed on to different consumer categories, and maybe about close to less than 100 crores has been passed on to the residential consumers who has opted for it.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are actually at time. So just to summarize from the last point, that in addition to the regulations, we also need better communication to communicate the benefits of these programs to the consumer for better adoption. And with this, I will pass it on back to Ahona to close the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I would request all the panelists and WRI team member to turn on the cameras so that we can just take a picture. However, I want to just mention that we hope these conversations will continue to strengthen collaboration across power sector ecosystem and help advance practical scalable solutions for managing India's growing peak demand challenges. I thank all the attendees and the participants who joined us today for the first session of Power at Peak series. We have 2 more webinars coming up. Please do follow us on LinkedIn for the notifications, and we will also drop an email about it as well. Thank you once again, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
all.